Hello friends, I'm Rob. Today I'd like to tell you the story of a blue heron sculpture that's at the town center area in Chesapeake in front of the Edge Apartments. This blue heron actually tells the story of a camera, the Pentax 17, and I'd like to share with you an experience shooting this camera. But we can't stop talking about the heron, and as we look at these images, I want you to know you got to print them. If you don't print your images, you won't see what the camera can truly do. So, let's start our journey by taking a look up at some images. Again, friends, my name is Rob. I've got way too much stuff on my desk, and this you see here is the blue heron shot with the Pentax 17. When we look at these images and you develop things yourself, you might say, goodness, I don't know how sharp this actually is. Zooming into 300% on this 4K high-def monitor really makes the image look almost unusable. That's crazy, isn't it? When we look at other images, we can see we've got some sharpness in the eye, but then once again at 300%, we're kind of losing it. And you might ask yourself, well, what kind of good is that? Let me share with you something else just to consider. When we look at images like this, we've really got to think about what type of story we're telling. Are we talking about photo walk, where someone went and got a cup of coffee? Or are we talking about a place where someone just dropped their cell phone, picked it up, and kept skipping along? What view into someone else's world are we trying to tell? I have another question for you while we're thinking about that. What about this? If you haven't been to Town Center in Chesapeake, you may not know that that's where Dollar Tree is headquartered. Dollar Tree, yeah, you know the ones. You get everything for $1.25. Have you ever seen their headquarters building? While I was walking around photographing the Dollar Tree headquarters with this Pentax 17, people were asking me, why am I shooting that building? Like, what am I doing? It's just the building. And I asked them, have you ever actually looked at the architecture of that building? Have you actually looked at how the windows reflect the lights in the cloud? How they kind of draw you in? Have you looked? Have you just looked? It's beautiful. But to tell that story, we've really got to get back to the blue heron. My son asked me the other day, we were walking around, and he asked me, how do you know what photo to take? We were using this Olympus OM4 and this ProMaster lens. And I let him know, actually it's pretty easy. If you've got a shot of 36 exposures, you've really got an opportunity to take 9 different vignettes at different focal lengths to tell the story of one spot along the way. And when you connect those 9 different vignettes equaling 36 total photos, instead of a point and shoot adventure, you actually have 9 different scenes, kind of like a movie. So he said that sounded great, but wanted to know, how do you take them? Well, the day after we had that conversation, and I'll share with you what we talked about in a moment, this camera came in. And when I put it up to my face to look through the viewfinder, and I started looking at what it means here with the different focusing distances, I said, that's how we do it. When I talk about photos and I take an image, I'm really talking about framing. Storytelling has everything to do with framing. So when I work with a bride or a couple, or a scene or an area, I think about a 4-shot framing vignette, a snippet, an amuse-bouche, if you will. Something fun. And it starts with a wide shot. The wide shot can be wider than this. When it's wider than the frame that you see here, I call that an environmental shot. You see, when I hire a photographer as an independent contractor for my wedding business, if they don't already understand framing and what I'm looking for, I describe framing in 5 separate looks. An environmental look, a wide shot, a full length, a portrait, which is usually hips and higher, and then a headshot. There's a secret sixth shot I didn't mention. That's a detail shot. When I'm working with people, I often work on that 5 or 6 shot framework. Here, we have a wide shot. The environmental shot would have been this same kind of framing, or slightly off-centered possibly, that showed more of the area. But in this case, I worked with this one frame. From this wide shot, I moved to the full length. Can you see? In a full length shot, you have about the same amount of space on the top of the frame as is the bottom of the frame, and from the left and the right side of the frame. Now I recognize that the little feet aren't perfectly captured here, but I think that makes a good point. If this was a person, the head would be up here, the feet would be down here, and you'd have about equal amounts on either side. For portraiture, obviously, these are just suggestions, but a good starting point. Choose your own. From there, we move into a portrait location. This is about the waist up area. Maybe it would be closer to a bust shot like breast up. And then we move into the detail shot. In this instance, I chose to take a detail shot of the beak, and we can actually see on the prints and in the image some spider webs that are there. You see, these 4 shots right here allow me to take one specific location and give it a whole life. When I consider a building a different subject, I think again, how are we going to show that image? There's our wide shot. There's a detail shot. Here we have our full length shot. Another full length shot with the reflection. And then a close up. All right? Check that out. These 4 shots, or 5 in this case, allow me to tell the story of this building. When we look at the Pentax 17, and you could do this with any camera, it's all about framing. I really get to thinking, the infinity marking all the way from our focus distance from 0.82 feet all the way up to infinity, those hard stops that we have that correspond with the mountain, 3 people, 2 person, 1 person, fork and knife, and the flower for the macro, these directly determine different framing guidelines that we see inside of the camera. Well, you can't see it, but those framing guidelines in this portrait orientation perfectly line up with a detail shot, something close to the camera, about the length of this strap. The knife and fork, which is actually a perfect selfie shot. If you hold the camera at arm's length, you are in a perfect location to get a selfie of yourself or whomever. It's also the perfect location for a close-up. When we switch over here to the 1 person, consider that to be your thighs to head, hips to head, depending on the size of the person. We move over here to 2 people. Now you're closing in on knee to head. So shin, knee. So think of this as your 3/4, possibly your full length. When you get into your 3 people, you're definitely at your full length. And when you get here to infinity, the mountain, you're at environmental or wide. If you think about those distances, once again, starting with our detail shot, wow, that 3/4 of a foot, that 9 inches, that's perfect. It's a nice detail shot. It fills the frame. When you're about 1.7 feet away, so 1 foot 9 inches away, you're at a great close-up shot on this wide lens. Well, it's not really wide, it's 37 millimeters, but on this lens right here, you get a great face in the shot, like a headshot, a tight headshot. When you move over to 4 feet, you get a great portrait shot, which most people would consider around the waist to the head in the frame. At this 5.6, you get a great 3/4 shot, wonderful, which is around the knees, a little bit below the knees, to the top of the head, and then a little room on top for the frame. When you get to 10 feet, you are at a great full-length shot. And by the time you get to infinity, you're at a great wide shot, so your entire subjects can be there. If we're going to take that framing and look at it a little bit closer, let me share with you what we're looking at. Now, I was grabbing some snags while people were running around, so my framing is a little off, and I was shooting from the hip. I want you to remember, think about where the camera is. The camera's lens is not at my eye level, so I was walking around shooting with the camera at my hip level. See that? Okay, this is about a 3/4 framing. There's a little extra room on top than there should be at the bottom. If we put this person in the middle and you imagine that their legs continue down, you'd see we're at a 3/4 distance right there. Still a nice frame. I like it because they're moving into the frame. Here we have more of a wide shot. Notice we have the door that's closing, the lady coming out after getting coffee. We're showing a wider area. This would be the group shot. This is the 10-foot distance. Here, we're at infinity. This is your wide shot, right? When you're looking at this, you're thinking about how the tree is framing out the sky, but how the perspective lines of the top of the buildings are moving forward into the frame, well, I guess kind of towards the side of the frame as the walkway lines, the crossing walk lines are moving into the frame. And in those 3 shots, we just kind of looked at how the framing works. Which brings us back to me. Say hey. And our wide shot for the blue heron. You see, now when we look at this, we can see how the framing works quite a bit more. For this wide shot, I was on my 3 people, which is roughly 10 feet. Since I'm not shooting a person, the wide shot is good for a full length at 10 feet or a group shot of people. In this instance, this area right here. Then I moved into my full lengths. And on the camera, I was using my 2 people. Probably in this one because the heron is a little bit smaller than a person. But I was filling the frame with that full length. Then I moved into my close-up, right? This is my portrait, which takes me down to the 1 person. Notice the difference in framing. Full length and portrait. That's the difference between 1 person and 2 people on your framing guidelines, on your focusing guidelines. And then finally, I moved into the beak shot to get the blue heron's eye. And on that, I ended up using the macro and the distance measurement provided. So that's the story of how this blue heron can help you take great photos. Think framing, look through your viewfinder, and fill the frame based on your distance. It's just that simple. Guys, I hope you have enjoyed the story about the blue heron and how this Pentax 17 helped me capture a beautiful vignette of the new Chesapeake downtown area. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. Remind you, I'm Rob, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye for now.